In this episode of The Lock-In, I speak with Barry Chapman. Barry Chapman may not be a familiar name, but he was the driving force behind Triple J, Australia's national youth radio network, and Channel V music television that launched some of Australia's biggest bands. Barry now lives in Spain during the winter and Scotland during the summer. I spoke to him about his escape from Spain, driving through 3 countries before the state of emergency kicked in. He also gives some tips for musicians and creativity in these times. Barry's my wife's former boss, so you'll hear her in this episode too. I'm Brett Farrell, and this is The Lock-In. G'day, Barry. How are you?
I'm good, Brett. Yourself?
Oh, a little bit nervous, if I'm honest. A little bit nervous. I'm talking to the godfather of Triple J on my little podcast.
Right.
Feeling a bit nervous, but that's okay.
I think there are other reasons in the world to be nervous at the moment, and that is definitely not one of them.
Yeah, you never got my demo tape. You never got it back in the day. I don't know what happened with that, but anyway, that's fine. Loretta told me your story, Barry, about if I can put it simply, escaping Spain, driving through 3 countries to get.
Basically, we in winter we live in Spain, and which we've done for the last 8 or 9 years probably. And on Friday before last, I was up at the golf club, and they announced the state of emergency, and I went, I know what's coming next. It'll only be a period of time before they lock the borders, and you can't get out. And we were due to come home to a wedding anyway the following week. But I said to Janice when I got home from golf, I think we should go tomorrow. So we set about getting the house cleared and cleaned and set and leaving. We finally got in the car about 5 o'clock on the Saturday afternoon, and we drove up to the next village. We planned to stay in a place called Moreira, which is sort of halfway between Valencia and Alicante.
Yeah.
And we were up at a small town called Tailada, and Janice was going into the supermarket to get some supplies for the trip. And I was listening to the radio. There's a couple of good English-speaking radio stations there, so it's easy to get some information. And the news was on, and they'd just moved from state of emergency to state of alarm. And I said to Janice, we could be in trouble because they're bringing out the military.
Oh, my goodness.
They're going to lock down the country.
Wow. Now,
we had no idea what that meant at that point in time, other than, the inevitable was that, countries were closing their borders and what have you. And we thought, let's make a run for it. So we did. I mean, I don't think they would have stopped us.
Yeah.
But certainly 3 days later, the border at Catalonia into France was closed. We went via the west coast up through Zaragoza and into Biarritz and up the west coast of France. But it was quite fascinating to see 2 countries that were really taking it quite seriously. The restaurants, the bars, the shops, everything was closed, and there was they were enacting their state of emergency. And then to get to the UK, 24, 36 hours later, and to see a country that looked like anything was happening at all, the roadhouse cafes and petrol stations and all that sort of stuff, traffic on the road, cars everywhere, people going about their lives, pubs full, restaurants full.
What was it? It was
just a complete and utter contrast.
But was it a state of denial that you found in the UK, or was it something else?
Well, I kind of hold the view that there has been a kind of state of denial. I think in the last week they've come to realise and understand the science rather than listen to the politicians, as it were. And I think the situation has been similar, UK, USA and Australia. If you look at the 3, they've sort of taken this attitude of, well, the public's got to be responsible, where the European attitude is, no, we're shutting down. And you'll get fined if you go outside. In Moreira, where we stay, one of our friends down there said in a WhatsApp to Janice, said it was just like wartime without the war.
But what's it like when you're sitting there? You're sitting in Spain. You finished a round of golf, probably playing the 19th hole. What's it like when you hear that? How does it come through?
Well, first of all, everybody's on their phones and, trying to get information they can. And, the group of people that I play golf with, they're a mix of expats who come down for the winter like me and a lot of expats who've lived there full time. And so those that are going home are kind of now all what's going on. And the others that are there are going, we just got to find out what's going to happen to us. Very different, though. One of the things that was fascinating is that I was in the supermarkets, hours after the state of emergency had been called. And again, Janice was on the next day. No panic buying, no large queues, no stupidity. No, people just going about their lives, buying their food. Yes, the shelves in some places were a little bit barer, but not a sense of panic or whatever else.
Well, how does that compare to what you may have seen about the Australian reaction in context?
I can't understand the lust for toilet rolls. I mean, over here they say Australians are full of shit anyway, but this is kind of it's kind of taking it to the extreme.
Well, maybe that answers the question for you. And was it the same when you went through France, or was it just like driving on a motorway through the night? Nothing really to see.
We drove through the day in France. The traffic was a lot less. The roadside cafes were closed, but the big service stations were still serving takeaway food and takeaway coffees and all that sort of stuff. But a very, very different environment when you went into those places, a lot quieter. And, just I think most people, because it was a Sunday, people wanted to get home from the down in the southwest to where they go.
It was exciting watching you escape from Spain.
Oh, it had its moments. I mean, I was only ever concerned that they'd stop us and send us back in the early stages. But I'd kind of figured out, I wasn't going to tell them that we had a house or we lived there, that we were just on holiday. We were in the camper or we were on holidays, so we were homeless. But it never came to that, But for us, it was just about getting back before it got worse. That was my feeling. I'd been watching it, and it was kind of like, France and Spain were in far worse condition, and getting there far more quickly than the UK was at that point in time. So it was like, best of all worlds. And here, where we live in Scotland, we're in a small community. It's only 2,500 people. There's a kind of isolation in it anyway. A lot of Northern Europe go south in winter. They call them the snowbirds. They're kind of like the same in the US. They go to Florida. Just get away from the winter and enjoy an outdoor life in summer. In winter down there, it's kind of like Gold Coast in winter. It's got that same, high teens, low 20s kind of very sunny days, lovely lifestyle. Sit in the sun, get sunburned, have a good time. Interesting. I got an email last night from one of the guys that I was with on the Friday before last when we decided to go, and he wasn't due to leave until the Monday, but they were catching a ferry out of Bilbao to Portsmouth. We drove up through France. There's two ways you can go. We just don't like taking our dogs on the ferries. But so they got up there, and they were then basically confined to cabin for the next 30 hours in the ferry. That was it. They got on straight to the cabin. That's all. You're here. He said it was it was not one of their favourite trips, but it got them home. Of course, they get off the ferry, and then they got another 470 miles to run to get home for 500 miles. So
it's Mother's Day in the UK at the moment. So what's the vibe with people? We spoke to Alan Jenkins last night. And, he had as a 98-year-old mother he can't see, and he's got a daughter in isolation who won't see him. Is there what's the vibe up there?
I think it's just I won't say people are confused. I think it's a strange feeling. It's hard. It's like nothing you've ever lived before in your life. And there's no knowing it, if you know what I mean. There's a silent enemy out there that might or might not affect you. And a certain percentage of the population at this point in time, we don't really care. The vast majority do, but it as you can see, I mean, you just got to look at the stats of how this thing multiplies and what it does and how quickly it can move. To say, well, you know, we're not Italy or China or whatever yet, but we're a week away from it. It's moving that fast. So I don't know. I think it's just, you know, you've got to do the best you can. I mean, they're doing crazy things like, you know, the supermarkets here now have gone 8 o'clock in the morning to 9 o'clock, you know, for the elderly, you know, me. And it's kind of, and I go, that'll be the most busy time because the town's full of old folk.
So you're fighting for that loo paper.
Well, yes, there is that. I mean, I still don't get the fascination. I've just, you know, it's not a viral disease in the main that affects your stomach or your bowels. But no.
And where are you now? Scotland.
We're in Scotland. We're about 25 miles east of Edinburgh on the coast. Beautiful part of the world. I sit looking out over the Muirfield golf course where the British Open's played, out across the sea. There's 3 cruise ships empty, with skeleton crews sitting in the harbour waiting to figure out where they're going next, and a country in lockdown. But sometimes you wouldn't believe it. I mean, I was out walking the dogs, as I do, because I've got all this beautiful land out in front of me, sand dunes and forest and what have you, the beach. And normally, you know, you see a few dog walkers. The beach yesterday was full of people. So everybody kind of at a great distance to each other. But, you know, here where are we? We're end of March. It's still bloody cold. I mean, yesterday was probably about 6 or 7 degrees with a cold easterly wind, but there were still people everywhere.
Well, we had that in Sydney as well. You may have seen Bondi went a bit mad as well. Sydney's been closed down now. Did you hear that? Sydney's been closed down? Yeah,
I saw the photos, I saw the stories, you know, and it's happening, and people are just not believing, I think, at this point in time, what the reality is. And, you know, all I say to people is look at what's happening in Italy. Yeah. If you want to understand and get some concept, you know, another 870 people died yesterday.
Oh my God!
It's just horrendous, you know.
You know, and one of the journalists from the Sydney Morning Herald this afternoon stuck a photo up on Twitter, the Coogee Bay Hotel, which was just heaving with tourists and people sitting in the beer garden in the sun, having a lovely old time.
Yeah, well, there's a degree of selfishness about it. I think, you know, the concern is that if you're younger, it's not going to have a great effect on you, just like in a cold or whatever else, and you'll recover. Yeah, but you know, if you want to infect your elders and those that are with underlying conditions and what have you, you know, you're going to cause an absolute drama. Yeah. And that's the selfishness I see of saying, well, I'm all right, Jack. You know, I'll be fine. We're not going to worry about you.
And what was
sorry?
What was the Spanish reaction like?
Just, you know, they're concerned. They're, you know, obviously really concerned, and Spain has gone crazy in the last week as well.
Crazy. What does that look like?
Well, just in terms of the numbers of people infected and the number of people dying and the process that's gone on there. Spain's got the biggest civil police force probably anywhere in Europe. There's 3 levels of police there. So they're really tight on their lockdowns. And, you know, you can't go out of the house without your letter. You can only go out as one person. You can't walk the streets. You can only go to the supermarket, or you can only go to the pharmacy, or you can only go to the doctor kind of approach, and they're really strict about it. So, but the people accept that. You know, that's my reading of what's going on there. The people are much more accepting.
Yeah.
You know, where we stay, Maria is a summer resort.
Yeah.
A beautiful little town with a Moorish castle and what have you. And, you know, the beach at this time of the year, because the temperatures will be in the low mid-20s, you know, you could see 15,000 people on the beach. There is no one.
And what's it like in Scotland to compare?
Well, as I say, yesterday on the beach here, huge beaches at Gullen, but, you know, there's probably 1,000 people on the beach, you know, across the day, walking around, doing what have you.
Is that do you see that as more a denial, like you noticed driving through England?
I still think that there's a fair degree of denial in this country. I mean, people are having corona parties and God knows whatever else. It's like, hello, testing.
Anyone there? But so what does the future look like for you at the moment, Barry?
Well, at the moment, I'm in that wonderful group that they've isolated the over 70s. And
for those listening along at home, Barry doesn't look over 70 by a long shot.
We have been told that we should stay and be isolated for the next 12 weeks.
Are you introverted, risks. Barry, or are you more an extrovert?
Oh, I'm probably more the extrovert, but you kind of look at it and go, well, what's the point of taking the chance, really? 12 weeks is. The irony is, I did my Achilles last year, and I was isolated here at home for 2 months anyway.
So you get to relive all that again.
Sorry,
you get to relive all that again. Another 12 weeks indoors.
So it's not as though I haven't been through it before. And as someone said, all they're doing is asking us to sit on a couch. They're not asking us to go to war.
Yeah. So you sound like a bit of an expert with the Achilles injury and now this again. What are your top tips for surviving indoors for an extended period of time?
Oh, basically just get involved in your life. I mean, the beauty of life now is, as we're doing, we're talking online, I've been keep speaking to people, just have the conversations. I read a lot anyway. I'm curious about what's going on with this and watch it quite strongly, I suppose, probably more so than most. I read the papers, I look at what have you, see what the politicians are saying. We're also directly affected from a business standpoint, even though we don't fully own the business anymore. I sold it to the staff about 3 years ago. But we built a holiday rental business. We managed about 90 properties in this area. It's only a small area. You're talking about a population of probably no more than the two towns that we look after, probably no more than 9,000 people. But we managed 90 properties. And last year, the business booked probably close to £1 million in holidays. This year, in the last 3 weeks, it's been decimated. I mean, we were seeing 30, 40, 50 cancellations a day. You're seeing a business going from absolutely successful, beautifully run by Graham and Caroline, the two that own it these days, to absolutely looking at devastation, no income. And of course, it's a seasonal business. It's a summer-based business, even though it does rentals across the rest of the year, but it probably does 65% of its business in 2.5, 3 months. And so its cash flow now is not great anyway. It makes its money in summer and survives through the winter and to come back to the summer. So it survived the winter, as it's always done. Still has a little bit of cash in hand, but, all of a sudden it's like, 4 staff, what's going to happen? Can't pay them, can't pay the rent. We've already spoken to the bank and taken a holiday on the mortgage capital repayments. Fortunately, the government came out last week and are going to support workers and do all that sort of stuff. I think made some fairly aggressive moves to look after people. 80% of wages for people on who pay their tax and do all that sort of stuff like that. So. But boy, oh boy, I can tell you on Thursday, we were sitting there just looking at sheer devastation of a business with no idea when it was going to come back. You see 15 years of work just going down the toilet.
What does that look like for the future for you, though, when we get through the other side of this?
Well, we'll be all right, I think, on the other side of it, because North Berwick, along the way here, 4 miles away, has been a tourist destination for families in Scotland predominantly for the last 200 years. And so every year, mum, dad, the grandkids, the grandparents and the kids, they all come down for their week's holiday, maybe 2, and sit by the beach and play golf and visit the islands and do all the kind of stuff that you do there. So really, it's a wonderful place for kids. So that'll all come back.
But speaking of industries that are likely to be really decimated, let me put your music industry hat back on again for a bit. What's the music industry going to look like?
You're talking decimation for them as well. It's kind of every outlet that a musician had to earn money is basically gone. And the problem that's faced for all self-employed people is governments have real problems coming to terms with the self-employed. If they've got them on the tax register as a PAYE earner, then life's easy. They can pay and do all that sort of stuff. But if you're a musician, my God, it's what do I do next, other than get paid the dole and try and survive the period of time? That's all they can do. So if you're the big acts, you're not making your millions, but I'd be more concerned about the little folk who play the guitar in the cafe or the restaurant and all that sort of stuff.
But do you think the radio industries and I guess other places where you can hear music have got a job to do here to help support artists, at least in terms of promoting creativity?
Yeah, well, absolutely. I mean, I've always believed that. That's
now more than ever
been a strong platform of mine for as long as I've been in media. Support local artists. Radio in Australia has never been, outside of Triple J and the community operators, has never been one that you'd say has been fully behind the Australian music industry. They cherry pick the top end of it. If you're an emerging musician, it's hard. It's incredibly hard.
Yeah.
And I feel for them right now because they're losing their livelihood, and in the face of it, they don't have the support on the other side.
Do you have any comment about the entertainment industry more broadly?
Well, I think it's got the same problem as a lot of other industries. It's how you get through this, and for the big companies, they've got to be smarter about what they do. They just, in this day and age, the problem is that too many businesses are run on solely a financial basis. There's very little heart and soul to them. And the moment anything goes wrong, it's cut costs. And when you cut costs, you cut people. There's these days, most business are pared down to such a level anyway that they cut heads. And that's why I kept saying to people when Brexit was on, for example. The implication is if your product is now going to be more expensive than Europe than it was before, there's only one thing you can do, and that's cut your costs to be competitive. So you cut your costs. How are you going to get your margin? You're going to fire people. And so the massive impact and import of something like Brexit like this is people lose their jobs. And then it's up to government and business to support them.
And how are you? How are your family there? You okay?
Yeah. No, I'm good. I mean, as you can hear, I'm as aggressive and as and positive as I always am. I don't dwell on things too much. Just get on with my life and enjoy what I do. It's the phrase that has been apportioned to me along the way is "You'll never die wondering."
And speaking of people who will never die wondering, what advice do you think you've got for, I guess, this next generation of creative people? What can they do on the other side of this or through this?
The technology is there. Understanding what the opportunities are there to take advantage of it. The ability to self-publish and self-record and do all those things and use the technology now is more critical than it's ever been, I think. And it's more successful than it's ever been. It's just people just need to see the business side of how all that works as well as the creative side.
Yeah,
that to me, we go back, back in the 80s, late 80s, early 90s. I was the chairman of Oz Music, and it was an educational foundation that was originally set up during the Labor governments of the 80s, and its whole purpose was to educate people not just in music, but in the business of music. And understanding the business of music meant you understood business. And for a lot of people who choose to take a profession like a musician or something to do with the arts, understanding that it's not an easy path. It's a lovely job, but it's not an easy path. Is the real point. I always just say to people, first thing I tell you is go and buy a lottery ticket, because if you're a songwriter, you've got more chance of winning a lottery than you've got of having a hit record.
Barry, I've spent the last 20 years working alongside songwriters, and some have been Grammy winning, some have just tried and failed. But the one thing that's universal is they all struggle with the whole business side of their careers.
Yeah. There's a denial that you have to embrace. You want to get, you're not doing it just for your art, and most, those who are successful and have money can do it for their art, but those who are not successful have got to understand the business side of it, or they're never going to be able to really do their art properly. Yeah. No, I just wish people well, and be safe. The risk at this point in time is not worth trying to outrun it, because you don't know what it is you're actually outrunning. And, we're being asked to be isolated for a period of time. Gee, life could be a lot harder than that. But look, you and Brett, like so many others, are just, the beauty of technology allows us to do all this, to have the conversations. I always say to people, people go, "Oh, you're on Facebook," and I go, "Yeah." I say, I know more about what my friends in Australia do now than I ever did when I was there. And I see that as a good thing. There's bad parts of it. There's there's the rubbish that goes with it. But in the main, I think it's a good thing, and I think that's the beauty of today, is we've got the technology at our fingertips. Now, in some places, the technology is better than others. I mean, I'm sitting here in a little town of 2,500 people, and I've got 70 megabits per second of internet, and you've probably got 2. It's like, I don't get it. It's crazy.
Barry, we'll give you your morning back. Thank you so much for just talking with us on the lock-in, because we're all locked in together, so we might as well share our stories and just keep each other company in the meantime.
Yeah, absolutely, Brett.
I'm Brett Farrell, and this is The Lock-In.